What's up, citizens, and welcome back to City Daily. And with me today is not just Steve, but also one of our new friends, Chris, who is also here to help us out at City Daily. Now, I know we've just done a sort of a little transfer roundup and stuff, and we did a little bit about the Kane and Grealish, but it's been a few days, and so much more has happened since then. Apparently, Daniel Levy's been given sign-off. There's some ridiculous figures linked to it. Grealish, there's been some developments there as well, and obviously there's still loads of talk about who will go to make room for these players. So let's start and kick in. What are we thinking about these Kane rumours?
Bollocks.
Go on, Chris. Go, mate.
I saw the rumours like circulating last night about £160 million deal and on about paying him £400,000 a week. If there's any kind of truth to that, then I don't even know where I'd stand on being a City fan anymore, to be quite honest, because that's absolute bollocks. To me, £160 million for a 28-year-old who's got injury issues or has had injury issues. Yeah, he's scored 20-odd goals at least a season. He's been top goal scorer a couple of times. He plays for England. I know some City fans are chuffed just because he's the England captain. I don't know why that has anything to do with it. But for £160 million, you're telling me we can't get anyone, better value for money? Someone slightly cheaper who'd do the same sort of job, someone younger, who, I mean, 160 bloody million quid, and then you're going to pay him more than Kevin De Bruyne. You're telling me we value Harry Kane more than Kevin De Bruyne?
I think that's part of it for me as well. This £160 million figure that's been bandied around is the similar amount of money that Dortmund are asking for Haaland. So I think if we're going to spend that on Kane, why not spend that money on a similar player but 8 years younger?
In 5 years' time, if they wanted to be sold, because usually you get a player 5-year deal, 2-3 years down the line, either they're nonsense and you're going to sell them, or they're really good and they want a brand new contract. So in 5 years' time, Harry Kane will be 33, looking for, hanging his boots up, or can't cope anymore in the Premier League, just like Aguero was. Or if you had somebody like Haaland, I'm not saying we'd go for Haaland, but if it was somebody like Haaland, someone young, you can at least recuperate some of that money. You've got an asset you can then sell and barter with or do whatever. It's just, and that's 160 million as well. Or even if it's 100 million, I still think it's a waste of money, because that's still £100 million in the pocket of one of our league rivals. It was the season before they were in the Champions League final. It's just absolutely. I know times have changed. I know figures have gone through the roof, but you think 25 million for Carlos Tevez. I mean, we didn't even pay 50 million for Sergio Aguero. It's absolute nonsense. 28 million pound for 160 million for a 28-year-old Harry Kane. I think it's laughable.
Is there a different point of view, Steve? Are you thinking this is actually a bit of a deal?
I don't know. It's a difficult one, because I think, as Chris said, football's changed and sort of money is there whether you like it or not, and you kind of got to sort of deal with it. PSG started it with Neymar, officially, I would say. I am in that boat though of, I think, 160 million. You are now like it. We kind of got out of that thing of where, City, we're in the league, this type of thing, and it's sort of been pushed onto others when they've seen sort of top 10 transfers, and Man City aren't even in it. But this would push that, that out the window. So you kind of get that again. I think I said in our last one, Kieran, that we were after Andre Silva, I think it was. Frank. He's got for 20 million. He's gone for, and he was with the goal scoring with Lewandowski and Haaland in Bundesliga. And he's gone for like £20 million. For me, it's that thing of like, Haaland's not going to move now. So just get someone in, whether, if it is someone a lot younger or maybe someone a little bit older, maybe like Danny Ings, I don't know, have him for a season, then Haaland will make his choice.
Yeah.
And if it is he is a City fan and his dad wants him to come to City and all this sort of stuff, then we'll get him next season for nearly £100 million less than we would pay for Kane. It was a £75 million release clause. a £90 million difference or whatever. I just think if it is, obviously Pep likes Kane, and it is his first target. But when Pep said in February that City haven't got the funds to do it, and now all these funds and all this money's coming out, I never believe it when they say it, because City are so shrewd like that. You know, we haven't got any money, but we'll whack out 65 million for Diaz just out of nowhere. It's just trying to play that type of game, and I'm not all about that. I think if you give me a chance, and Grealish has got this contract of £88 million, I'd rather it be on him and get Danny Ings on a free or whatever it's going to be, because he's on a year left, or 15, 20 million or whatever. Do that to equivalent to £100 million, and you've got two players instead of spending 160 on one.
Yeah. What are we thinking, Chris? Are you thinking that Danny Ings is probably not a bad stopgap actually for a year instead of going down this Kane business?
Personally, for a stopgap, I wouldn't bother buying anyone for a striker. I mean, we played last season pretty much without a striker, and we topped the goal scoring charts. Why do we need one? And touching on what Steve said then about Pep saying we don't really have the funds. If you go back a bit longer than that, you also, was it Caldoon who did that interview? I think it was around the Virgil van Dijk transfer saga when we missed out on him. And he basically said, look, we have criteria that we match for our players that we buy. No more than 25-year-old, and then it's to do with the money. If the money's not right, they walk away. That's why we ended up with Diaz. You know, we paid his £60-odd million release fee. Why would you then spend over 100 million on someone who's 28?
Yeah,
it's just.
This does stink of desperation. It stinks of desperation. This, I think, I think clubs are beginning to feed on it as well. I think, but we're starting to enter the realm where, you know, the United tax and everything. I think we're starting to enter that realm where clubs are going, City needs a player like this, so we're going to shove an extra 20, 30 million on the price. And I can see that obviously has happened with Kane. I think Levy is a shrewd and difficult businessman to work with. Kane was bandied around at 120, 110 at the beginning of the transfer window. He's now been cleared at 160, which, even if we are even believing this news, of course, because this news comes from The Sun, which historically aren't necessarily the best source. There's a nice little giggle there from Chris about that. So it's about whether are we even believing the source? Or are we just bandying around numbers that don't even exist right now? And I think we probably are, but if we're going to talk about it, we better talk about it.
I think also with City, and I think that it's been said a lot, is the fact that City will always pretty much go with someone with a release clause, because we just buy it straight out. So that's why the Jack Grealish rumours are, if he's got the £88 million release clause, City will just pay it, because it will go to the fact of, if City's in for a player, a club will batter that price up about 30, 40 million pound where he should be, because it's Man City. So City have kind of gone to that thing now, right, if you've got a release clause, we'll just buy it. You can't do anything about it. You can't up it. So that's why I personally think, whether we get a striker or we don't, that's why I think we in the back, we'll probably wait for Haaland, do his release clause, we'll speak to him, and then we'll go from there. I mean, we've never mentioned, why can't we just push Liam Delap up to the first team? What's the issue? A striker is completely different to having a young centre half or something like that. If you're a striker, you know where the back of the net is. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you've got balls coming in left, right, and centre from the best midfielder in world football right now, and pushing, I mean, obviously, but you've got Mahrez, Sterling, Foden, Gundogan, obviously De Bruyne, pushing balls through. Liam Delap knows where the back of the net is.
I think he was given those opportunities, though, and didn't necessarily waste them, but didn't exactly sell himself with those opportunities when he played in some of the cup games last season, the season before. I don't necessarily. He's not a first option. I think Ferran Torres's display against Newcastle shows some promise in that position, but I mean, Chris is right. We were still the top scorers in the league last season. We still created plenty. I think we still needed to capitalise on some really strong performances from specific players like Gundogan, and we needed to capitalise on other teams struggling during COVID. And I mean, you look at the Villa-Liverpool scoreline of 7-2, and you tell me that scoreline happens outside of a COVID-related world and outside of the sort of chaos that brings with it, I don't think it is. I think the uncertainty really played into that win, and I think that was a real determining factor as to how the league went last year, because we started the season badly and quite badly, and we managed to come back into it after that Leicester defeat. I think trusting our attack now with a young, unproven striker in the Premier League would be a mistake.
I think even if it wasn't a mistake, it's not going to happen. I think Pep's the problem, to be quite frank. Liam Delap, he got his senior debut in the Cup and scored. He came on as a sub against Leicester in the defeat, and he hit I think he hit the post. He showed more desire and passion than half the other players on the pitch that day. And the amount of games I know we went on a 20-odd game winning streak in all competitions, but you look at some of those games, the amount of times we've had over 20 shots on goal, but only 3 of them were on, or 2 or 3 were on target. Ilkay Gundogan was our top goal scorer last season. That says a lot. You've got all these shots. Yeah, the ball's getting put in the box. No one there to finish it. Sterling's not an out-and-out striker. Gabriel Jesus isn't an out-and-out striker. We don't have one. So
well, this is it. And this is why I think
it worked last season, but then everyone else started. We played badly, and then after Christmas, everyone decided, right, we're not going to play football anymore, and that's why we won the league. Everyone else played so bad.
Yeah. This is why I'm of the volition that we need an out-and-out striker. I really like this Danny Ings rumor. I think he's a great goal scorer. He's a natural goal scorer. I think he's still got a bit of pace. He's still got a presence in the box. He scores goals in a Southampton team that lacks a lot of creativity. Che Adams is good, but he's no Sterling or Foden or anything. Same with James Ward-Prowse and De Bruyne. These players, they're all right, but they are not the creative force that City is. I think Danny Ings could easily be a 20-goal a season striker if he played with City, because all he needs to do is sit in that box and know where the ball is and know where the back of the net is. I think Danny Ings is a great holdover if we need to wait until the buyout clause for for Haaland next season. I think it's a great option.
So, if it was me in charge, say if I was Pep and I had a bit of power, I'd go to the board and say, right, look, if you want to spend 150 million on a striker, go to Dortmund.
Yeah.
Make a deal with them and get Haaland now, but send him back on loan to Dortmund for the season. They don't lose out. We guarantee that he's then our player, and spend £5 million at Wycombe Wanderers, get Adobe Akinfenwa, the beast, stick him up front. He'd be a 20-goal season man. Like you said, Kevin De Bruyne. You put me up front, I get 10 goals a season. I've got a ruptured ACL. If you know where you need to be, you just need to stand in a spot. You've got KDB, Foden, Silva, Gundogan, Mahrez, Torres. All these players know how to kick a foot. They know where to put the ball. The amount of times a ball goes into the box, it just needs one of those hungry sort of poaching strikers. You get Akinfenwa for a year, and then Haaland comes back after a year on loan at Dortmund. We'd be sorted.
I love the Akinfenwa. I love the Akinfenwa.
I'm sat here thinking about all of this, and then with this thing with like saying getting Haaland and doing that loan thing, that'd have been it's shrewd thinking. We'll just keep Aguero for another year then. Why? I tell you what, that finish in that Crystal Palace game, right? And I thought, what the hell are we doing here? Why are we letting him go? Because as much as like Danny Ings, if we had him for a season, we had a natural goal scorer, and he had injury problems. And we could be going back to that with Danny Ings and have that similar. But I would give me Aguero any day of the week. I'd rather have an injury-prone Aguero than an injury-prone Danny Ings. And then just do that thing with Haaland, like you say, buy him, loan him back. We know we got still probably the best striker in the world on our books, regardless of whether he's injured or not. And then we know that we're probably going to get one of the best strikers in the world for the next 8 to 10 years, the season after.
It's shrewd thinking. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's realistic to send the best striker in the world back on loan. I can't see Cheeky ever making that decision. And
if it was, I would rather keep Aguero. I would have rather kept Aguero anyway, and then just go all out for Haaland next summer.
There is an argument to be made there that one of the reasons that they didn't keep with Aguero was wage bill. We can't sustain that wage. If we were looking at making signings this window, then we needed obviously more space on our wage, and Aguero as a stopgap for another year is a lot more expensive than Danny Ings for a stopgap for a year, and I know the history with Aguero, and I love Aguero as much as the next man, but money is a dictator now in football. Danny Ings is a cheaper option that could be just as reliable for a season with the amount of creativity that we've got. And when I say just as reliable, I mean in the last season where Aguero has been out for a large amount of that time, and we missed him because of his injuries. And I understand that Danny Ings still has his injury issues, but they're not as profound as Aguero's have been over the last season or two. I don't think he's missed large spells of games. I think he's only missed a couple at a time. So he's a reliable player and a reliable goal scorer, and I like him in the list in terms of a stopgap for a year. Aguero, I mean, you never know. Aguero might not even be able to join Barcelona. He might be forced to come back for a year because of the Barcelona issues that are going on with all the money that they can't spend.
Yeah, I think I get it, but you'd have to spend 15 to 20 million pounds to get Ings in the first place, where we already had Aguero here, and then his wages on top, and he's going to want probably at least 100 grand a week. So if you work it out, it's probably going to be cheaper to have kept Aguero, because we're going to have to fork out. Southampton aren't going to let him go for cheap, because they're going to get the most that they can for him because he's on his final year of his contract. So me personally, I'd rather kept the money, get Grealish and Danny, get Grealish and keep Aguero, than spend 20 million on Ings, which is probably what it will be. But I think you look at it this way: City would have had 4 strikers on the list, and we're working through them now. I think Andre Silva was one, and I think they thought, "Oh shit, well we've lost him now. That's gone." And I think the next 3 is Danny Ings, Haaland, and Kane. And it's just which order they're in now. I
think we were banding around with Kane and Haaland for so long and trying to make them work that we missed the punch on Andre Silva. I'm sorry that we missed the punch on Andre Silva. However, I understand why we were banding around with Kane and Haaland first. Obviously, Andre Silva, while being an excellent goal scorer, he is still relatively new. Still hasn't played in a top tier side. So we don't know how he'd deal with other large egos around the squad. We don't know how he'd deal with top tier management and things and the demands. He has a relatively similar gameplay style to Aguero and things. He likes to use his upper body strength, and he likes to hold position. But we know already that Pep changed his game style to get Aguero to play, because he wanted Aguero to play, because he saw that he was obviously a top tier goal scorer. Would he want to do it again for a brand new striker coming through the ranks? Maybe, maybe not. Is it easier to go out and find a striker who wants to play the way that Pep wants them to play, like Lewandowski, like Haaland? It probably is. But I think we've talked quite a bit about strikers now. So let's just do a quick yes and no on this Kane 160 rumor. A, are we thinking it's true? B, is it ever going to happen?
I've just had an update through from City and Spurs have both announced they're denying all reports of any of the rumours.
Well, there we go.
So there's your answer.
No and no. No and no. Must be unanimous.
Basically, a journalist has got bored at 10 o'clock at night looking at tits on page 3. He's seen crap at the back and just thrown it all over Twitter, and it's gone out of proportion.
Yeah, yeah. I saw some funny reactions on Twitter last night as well. And we'll come on to this because it's very important to the next little bit of news, which is the Grealish rumours. We saw loads on Twitter last night about how someone has the weird and wacky story. Someone's brother-in-law who once met his gardener, who met him once when he paid an invoice, has got a rumour that he said at a wedding that he was going to Man City. And it's a weird, long story about how this rumour came to be. But apparently he said that he's coming to Manchester City. So, again, how valid is this? What are we thinking? Do we like Grealish? Do we like the fact that Grealish might be coming to City at all?
I think there's more into this because if Grealish has a buyout clause, then City are more interested, as I said earlier. So I think there is a little bit more into this than not not a lot more. But I think which I think is true, that he does have a release clause, then City are more interested. Me right now, I'd rather have Grealish than Kane right now. Personally, because I would personally rather have Haaland in a year's time than now, because get Grealish in. If we have to sell someone, we have to sell someone. But I mean, the boy's class, and as I said in the video before, I'd rather have him in the team than playing against him, because he's so annoying to play against. And like you said, how many fouls we could get? Kevin De Bruyne are getting well over double figures with free kicks. We've got Grealish in the team.
Yeah, free kick merchant, isn't he?
Oh my God!
Yeah. What are we thinking? What are we thinking, Chris? What are you thinking about the Grealish rumours?
I hope they're not true. I don't like him. Don't want him. I know, Steve's just saying then he'd rather have Grealish over Kane. Who would you have over Grealish in the actual City squad? Because, I mean, the way I look at it, you've got Gundogan, Foden, KDB, Mahrez, because he had a decent season last year for once. You got Torres, who's shown potential he's coming through. Bernardo Silva. You've got all these players who play where Grealish plays. So you say, oh, we'd have to sell one for the funds. You'd have to sell someone just to get him into the team sheet. And yes, he gets loads of fouls at Villa, but name me one other player at Villa who is any threat to anyone. It's like when we used to have King Clancy, and King Clancy used to be the target man for some big hairy bastard to come and break it, go through him. You take Grealish out, Villa have got no threat whatsoever. He spends too much time doing his hair, he spends too much time on the floor. I don't particularly think he's amazing. It's like United have just bought Sancho. Sancho couldn't even get in the England squad proper. Grealish spent just as much time on the pitch as Henderson at the Euros. And, I really don't rate him, especially for £80-odd million. Yes, he's a good player, but we don't need him. We don't want to do what Chelsea did with Wright Phillips and buy him just for the sake of then not having to play against him. I just think use what we've got.
There is definitely some logic in that, in terms of, are we buying him just so we don't have to play against him anymore? I think in terms of where he can play, he is very adaptable. And if we were to be going down the route of not buying a striker this year and not looking for that stopgap, or trying to rely on the youth and some experimentation with Ferran Torres to try and fill that striker gap, I think Grealish is a good complement to that. He is creative still. He's very good. He can play centre of the park. He can play just off to the left, and he can obviously play on the left wing as well. So he's very good down that left-hand side. I can see what you're trying to get at. I think he'd be a complement to De Bruyne than Gundogan is, given if Rodri is consistent. I don't know, that's probably beholden on quite a lot for Rodri to be consistent, but he is still a very good ball player. He's very strong when it comes to moving the ball forward. He's very good at keeping the ball, and he will go down before he loses it. And I think that's something very important. He can slow a game down just as we need him to. Because I think just when we lose the ball is sometimes when we look at our most fragile, because it's very easy for teams to break off the back of us because we press very high, and that's natural for City to press very high, and natural for Pep's way of playing. So when we lose the ball, I think we can look a little bit frightened. And I think Grealish, if he has the ball, and if we start to be losing it, then he can move forward, and he can take the tackle, and he can go down and slow the game down, eliminating that threat. So I get it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand the point of view.
I think that's only though if he gets the free kick. It's like, he gets free kicks at Villa. How many times do City players get fouled and don't get anything given, especially in Europe, which is where we play. He hasn't played it. I mean, he's had a bit of time at the Euros, but he hasn't played in the Champions League. I don't know whether he's got. I honestly can't see what he'd bring to the cohort that have just topped the goal scoring records last season. Like, I know you're saying he's a better, compliment to Gundogan, but to KDB. But then again, Gundogan was our top goal scorer last year.
Yeah, and Grealish does a very similar job to what Gundogan was doing this season,
Yeah,
which was
everything.
the carrying the ball to the edge of the box, cutting it out onto his right, and curling it into the corner. And Gundogan did that a number of times, and Grealish does that too. Sorry, Steve.
I think there's two sides. No, I think there's two sides, and I agree with Laney as well. But I think also in my head is the fact that our lads aren't getting any younger. So Gundogan's already 30. Mahrez is hitting 30. He's already 30 already. So is it just getting that sort of replacement in, learning as much as they can off him? I think where Grealish has had to do it on his own at Villa, I think it might make him even better by having better players around him.
It's standard as well with Pep, isn't it? That players take about 6 to 12 months to settle into the system anyway. I mean, Mahrez took ages. Mahrez really only just showed this year and a bit of towards last year how good he was under Pep.
Laney loves Mahrez. No, the thing is, I think he knows personally that he's made a mistake with Rodri, thinking that he can replace Fernandinho. So I think I don't think Rodri can replace what Fernandinho does.
Not entirely.
I mean, I think everyone says, "Oh, he's great pass and all this sort of stuff," but I mean, the amount of passes that he misses, and they are like stinkers. Rodri, I think there's going to be. I think we'll get another person in for that proper holding. I don't think Rodri is what you call a proper holding midfielder. He's not a Fernandinho by a long way. And you look at now is what they're saying the best holding midfielder is in the world. And that's Kante. Rodri's nothing like him. He's not.
No, Kante's typical box to box, but for some reason he's also incredibly defensive. And he's also a great goal scorer. He's an all-round very good football player. N'Golo Kante, and I think he is somewhat of a generational talent and is maybe somewhat overlooked. I know, obviously, Chelsea fans love the art of him, and they think he's brilliant, and so do I. I think he's a fantastic footballer, and I think he is somewhat overlooked by some people. But I mean, if we were looking for that CDM role, we can look at players like Calvin Phillips, can't we, from Leeds, who is almost that Kante-esque style, who is very good defensively, but can carry the ball forward, can have a shot from outside the box, and can be very threatening. Yeah. Sorry, Chris, were you about to say something?
No, I was just... To me, I mean, I feel sorry for Rodri, because saying we got Rodri in to replace Fernandinho is like saying you get an MX-5 to replace your Aston Martin. You know? It's like saying getting someone in now to replace Sergio Aguero. How do you replace someone who is your club's greatest ever goal scorer, and who, in terms of goals per minute played, has got the best record in the Premier League? He beats Alan Shearer on that basis.
Well, we are very much in that stage now as a club.
How can you replace that? You know, it's a bit harsh, but.
But we were having the same argument with how do you replace Company, and we appear to have done it now with Ruben Diaz. He had a fantastic first season, obviously, and I believe he can go from strength to strength. So it can be done, but we definitely are in that place now where we need to start thinking about how do you replace club legends.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It's a difficult one, but when Rodri comes out and says, you know, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and wants to be this new Fernandinho, I don't think he can do it. That's me personally. I don't think in the long term he gives more defensive stability than Fernandinho does at 35 years old. So that must be saying something, surely. Like I said, I like Calvin Phillips a lot, and I would have him there because he can do that holding midfield role on his own. He doesn't need like Declan Rice that he had for England. I think he can do it on his own. But I think out of all of this, though, just to plan on something else, is what are we doing with a left back? Is Zinchenko really going to be our number one left back for next season?
Because I'm all right with that. I think Zinchenko's done a fantastic job so far. I think he's performed admirably. He clearly wants to show off that he can play the role. You know, and he's good going forward, and I know he's maybe a bit of a liability going backwards, but he still performs the role. He's still good. He can still shepherd players out and wide. I think I think he's all right for another season, personally.
I think he's our clear number
see
one.
These faces now.
Zinchenko's clearly our number one left back. Mendy is a sack of shit, an absolute sack of French crippled shit. It's not even just his on-field performances anymore. Last season, the stuff he was doing off the field, it was like he's just lost the plot.
I mean, he's a social media
man.
manager. He's a social media manager that somehow became a left back, a professional left back.
Yeah. It's just. When he first joined, he looked amazing, and he was amazing for that half a season before he got injured. But
I think that injury really rocked him. I think that injury really rocked him, and he's never found it. He's never found it again since, obviously.
No, and personally, I think the same would have been said for Sane.
Yeah,
I think it was selling Sane when we did. Yeah, it was a shame we got pennies for him compared to what he could have been worth.
Yeah,
but I think we should do the same with Mendy. I mean, as a like I said, he's a social media. He's a good laugh, but sell him, let him go somewhere that's slower, less demanding, and he can try and reinvigorate his career. I mean, to some extent, I was saying the same about Laporte last season. Should we really be keeping hold of Laporte because the injury he had was so bad? I don't want to see him just come in, play a few games, and get injured again. And I mean, as it happened last season, he could hardly get a game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he did perform admirably for Spain at the internationals. Obviously, the own goal. I won't mention that. No one mention it.
It was amazing. Yeah.
But he was very good defensively, and we'll have to see coming into the season as to whether or not that link up goes back to Diaz and Laporte together rather than Diaz and Stones. But I guess we'll see when things restart. I feel like we should probably bring things to a bit of a close because we've talked plenty about transfers now and all the different people that it turns out that Chris doesn't like. So we'll call it there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Let us know down below whether you like Grealish and you don't associate with Chris on these opinions. Do you think 160 million was a reasonable price for Kane? Because I mean, none of us do, but we never know. Let us know down below what you think the out of season is going to hold for us and the transfers. Don't forget to give us a like if you enjoyed this. Don't forget to drop a subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff. There are plenty of shorter videos as well as this longer one, so there's plenty to be watching. Let's say goodbye, Steve.
See you later, guys.
Let's say goodbye, Chris.
See you later. 5 mil for Akinfenwa.
Akinfenwa train. Let's go. Thanks so much, citizens. We'll catch you next time. And of course, up the Blues.